Riding motorcycles is like, nah. Riding motorcycles is like riding a bike? Okay. Riding a motorcycle is like, all right, who cares? Apparently I'm not creative enough to think of an analogy, but what I do know is riding a motorcycle is a skill. Really, most things are up to skill, but we can all admit that your Super Mario 64 speedrun doesn't have the same stakes if you fuck up that one jump compared to going down on your motorcycle, you know? Like trying to get that tactical nuke on derail only to get a Kimbo Ranger at 24 fucking kills because the fucking host decided to leave the match at the exact goddamn moment that you happen to be staring down 4 barrels of spam. I digress, but guess what? That moment may have sucked a deflated bag of Doritos. However, I went to get 30-something nukes. Point is, life is not a game. Life is a joke. Am I right? Life is similar to a game in that you take L's. You lose every now and then. You may take more or less L's than others, but where in MW2 I can be turned into Swiss cheese by a 12-year-old, your health, your well-being, your finances are not that expendable. Everything has inherent risk. Literally everything. Walk out the house, boom. Catch a bullet off some beef that wasn't even yours. Crossing the street, damn. Looks like Karen was doing the makeup going 40 and she mistook the gas for the brake. RIP, you get the point. Your life and health are constantly under threat. Everything is under threat. It's the world we live in. Mitigating factor is that we take precautions and make decisions to mitigate these risks. That's exactly why I go to the bodega with a flak jacket on. I kid, but for real. You put on a seatbelt, you cross the street carefully, you know, safety first. The thing is, safety isn't always fun. Just ask your baby daddy. Thank you. I'm here all week. It's the same for motorcycles though. Mitigate those risks. And I'm not even talking about when you suit up for a ride or the habits that you practice on the road. I'm talking about the beginners getting into motorcycles. More specifically, those in the United States. See, here in this beautifully red, white, and blue plate of freedom fries, your average 16-year-old hormonal pimple farm can take a 10-minute multiple choice quiz and then go buy a big old Busa. And this is immediately after leaving the DMV, like they can have the sketchy Craigslist ad bookmarked. If you don't see the issue here, let me explain using highly scientific terminology and professional visual aids. Dumb plus fast equal bad. Got it? Okay, yes. This is the most extreme case of dick compensation. I know it happens sometimes, but even most people have enough common sense to know that jumping straight onto a ZX14 or a race-ready 180 horsepower leader bike might be the most reckless thing you can possibly do in life. Most people know that. And I won't even address that. So let's scale it back to even those who just want to jump on a 600 class or 750. Or maybe a bit of an older leader bike. This is going to be a quick discussion about safety. Personally, I think all beginners should steer clear of the categories I've just listed for reasons I will get into later. However, there are certain levels of beginnership that I may be able to look at and then look over at an R1 and say, all right, sure. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Sport bikes. What's a sport bike? Sport bikes are actually race-bred bikes belonging on a track that some bozo decided to slap a horn and some turn signals onto. Sport bikes are lightweight in relation to the power they make, they're fast as shit, and in no way suited for a beginner. Sport bikes are twitchy, angry, and tight, and they bend you up and contort you into fetal position while they tenderize your nards. In a sense, it's like riding a Russian dominatrix around town. Shit, you pay just as much for it. Anyway, here's why these rather amazing bikes suck for beginners. Number one is that they're pretty expensive. You pay a premium for technology and the performance that comes along with a sport bike. If you buy a decent sport bike that isn't too ragged out or too old, you'll be paying a lot more for a bike that, quite frankly, you'll be way too inexperienced to even get all of the use out of.
Kawasaki's Ninja 300 was a game changer for entry-level sport bikes when it debuted in 2013.
The beauty of beginner bikes is that there's always demand for them. So if you buy an 8-owner Ninja 250, it's actually very likely that you'll either break even or you could potentially even profit if you clean up the bike a little bit. Also, if you down the beautiful Yamaha R6 and absolutely destroy the fairings, you know how expensive a fairing set is? If you buy a beginner bike that's already been down by the previous owners, those are discounts that are passed on to you, as well as the fact that it's kind of an expectation that as a beginner bike, it'll have eaten shit a couple times. I'd be warier of buying a down ZX6R than a Ninja 300. Remember, you suck. You don't really know how to motorcycle all that well yet. Everyone goes down sometimes. Don't you think your green ass is especially likely to? Come on. Your pockets will appreciate it, and I haven't even mentioned insurance yet. The facilitation of learning. Remember when I mentioned the way that a sport bike treats you? Yeah, listen, it doesn't really facilitate learning, to be honest. Hear me out, okay? On sport bikes, the throttle is snappy. And a range range is short and the engine is revved quickly. What this means is that the margin of error is much smaller than it is on bikes with a wider throttle range and slower throttle response. It doesn't help that 4-bangers and race-tuned engines in general tend to make the most power up top in the range. Beginners tend to death grip the bars instead of using them as a natural resting point.
You notice how now let go of your bars, stay leaned over and let go of your bars. You notice how you're able to hold all your weight just by your thigh? Now your hands can be loosey-goosey and be able to sit there.
So I just really got to be holding on with my thigh.
Yeah.
Furthermore, since sport bikes tend to put your ass in the air and your arms angled downward, a beginner may put undue weight on the bars and therefore the throttle. You ever hear of whiskey throttle?
There you go. You got it. You okay? Yeah, I'm good.
Don't get cocky.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Some people will panic a little too hard and freeze up. In launching, man, you get too cute with that clutch on a sport bike and end up popping it. The front wheel will want to get up and start waving everybody around. You hit a bump and yank that throttle? What if you panic? See, a lot of people use the pretty much trademarked phrase, "Oh, I'll just take it easy." Well, I'll just take it easy. I could just take it easy, right? And you know what? Sure, you absolutely 100% can take it easy. But will you? I mean, come on. You're sitting on 110 horsepower. Don't you want to crank the throttle every now and then and put a smile on your face? Of course you do. But okay. Let's assume you will take it easy and just put around lugging your expensive engine. The problem with the take it easy argument is that, yeah, you can absolutely do that, but you don't focus enough on actually learning. You're focused on taking it easy. I know these people mean well when they actually go through with taking it easy, but taking it easy, quite frankly, isn't all that fun. Now, you're hyper aware of everything you're doing instead of focusing on freely learning, understanding the limits, and above all, just having fun. And then there's making mistakes. As a beginner, it's easy to keep yourself in check. It's more about keeping the bike in check. The wrong move on a sport bike will make the bike react much more substantially than a wrong move on a beginner bike. We all make mistakes, and you want mistakes to hurt you as little as possible. The bike does exactly what you tell it. Who do you have to blame? If you accelerate too fast in a corner and end up fixating into a wall because you have no real experience making fast turns, who do you have to blame? Pop the clutch a little bit too hard and loop the bike. Accelerate too hard, power wheelie. These bikes become an entirely different animal once you spin the engines up at a certain RPM. It's like a turbocharged car, basically. Maybe you won't be ready for that. If anything goes wrong as a beginner, you will instinctually panic, and panicking gets you hurt. Look, don't rush to jump into a sport bike as a beginner. It's just a bad move overall. You wouldn't teach a new driver how to drive in a Dodge Hellcat, right? Or a Porsche GT3. See, these bikes are the equivalent of those crazy fast exotic cars. Difference being that you don't have a metal cage around you. One more reason, and this one is kind of opinion, but still. Honestly, it's a good feeling to start out on something smaller and then work your way up the ranks because you have appreciation for what you get next. It keeps things interesting and new when, for example, you've spent 6 months on a 300 and then jump on a 600 with over 3 times the horsepower. It's a feeling of graduation. I think I've rambled long enough, so let's close this out. Remember when I mentioned the varying degrees of being a beginner? Let me explain. You have the permit-only guy. This is the most green motherfucker you'll ever lay your eyes on. See, after the permit test, once again, this guy can do whatever he wants. Mind you, only experience that this guy has is sitting on his homie's Fireblade, starting it up, and then revving the engine. Now he's hooked. I don't want to see him on a sport bike at all. This is absolute red alert. He has no plans on taking the MSF course. Nope, he just plans on riding around on that permit. Then you have the permit plus MSF course only guy. He's a definite step up from the permit guy. I myself was once this guy, and even being that guy, I wouldn't have brought me a 250. And now the word guy sounds kind of funny. This person knows the rules of motorcycling, knows the proper procedure. Hell, he even has some actual riding experience. The main problem with this guy though is that he doesn't have any road experience with cars, people, and potholes, and cops, and all the other bullshit that's on the streets. The MSF course largely tries to deter you from buying sport bikes off the bat actually. So if them telling you doesn't deter you, then me telling you probably won't. I don't recommend you getting a sport bike if you're at this level, but at least you're certified and took a 3-day course on safety, so I guess you know what to look for. Then there's the permit and road/dirt experience MSF course guy. Quite frankly, you can do what you want. I think you're okay to make that decision. There's probably a shit ton of other guys, quote unquote, but we'll be here all damn day trying to list them. The point is, be smart about your life, health, and wealth. I don't want to see the strict regulation that you see in Europe. I think it's questionable to buy a missile as a beginner, but I want you to have that right in the end. Sure, it's doable, and I salute those that have done it, but you can't just be a follower based off, well, somebody's done it before, so I should be able to do it. Because motorcycling is a skill, and as with any skill, you have to build it up through the best means possible. You have to try your best to be patient and to take the route that will actually facilitate your growth the most. We want you safe, we want you content, and above all, we don't exactly need you raising our insurance rates any more than they are, you know. Regardless of what you decide to turn the key on, We can't wait to see you out on the road. Thank you guys for watching. This is one of those topics that, as a content creator, you definitely, have to interact with it a lot. People want to know what they could start on, or what's the best bike to start on, all that type of stuff. So I figured I would actually make a formal video about it. This is actually the first video I'm doing on my new Yeti mic. So why don't you leave a comment on how the audio sounds? I know a lot of people were complaining about the audio. If you enjoyed the video, if it made you laugh, leave a like. If you learned something from the video, leave a like. And if you're a beginner, just let me know what you plan on doing. After watching the video, you just watch the Illustrator coming to you from the great city of Brooklyn. Peace out.